Hi everybody, welcome to 5 Minute Ministries. A man was walking through a national park, and he's in an area where there isn't much. There's a few trees here and there, but mostly it's just full, thick, lush grass. And as he's walking, he looks down and he sees a brick that's partially buried. And so he picks up the brick and he starts to look at it, and he starts to think about, why is this brick here? Where did the brick come from? And the more he thinks about it, the more he comes to the conclusion that this brick is part of a huge city that used to be where this park is now. And the more he thinks about it, the more he's convinced that there had to have been a city. There would be no other reason for a brick to be here in the middle of this park. So he takes the brick home and he starts to go all over social media and starts to tell everybody about this city that he is claiming existed, and his proof is this brick. And of course people are asking questions, what happened to the city? And he says, well, it could have been a huge hurricane or some tornadoes that tore the city down and the people never rebuilt it, or the people who lived there just decided, we're just going to leave. We don't want this city anymore. And either way, what happened, the city was overtaken by all the nature. That the grass showed up and the trees just grew through, and now it's a pretty flat national park. And some people start to buy into this idea that he's right. And of course he has a brick, so it has to be proof. He has pictures of the spot where he found the brick, pictures of the park. So maybe it's true. Maybe there was a city there after all. Well, this story started to catch enough attention that the news media showed up and interviewed him at the spot where he found the brick. And he starts to tell them his story, and the reporter starts to ask questions too. And says, the reporter says, well, I'm confused, sir, because this park was commissioned by the President of the United States. And everything in it was done by construction workers. Everything was planted by gardeners, landscapers. It was all done by human beings. This didn't just grow over. This was commissioned by the President. And the man says, the President, huh? Have you ever met the President? And the reporter says, well, no, I've never met the President. The man says, well, then how do you know the President did this? How do you know the President even exists to do this at all? The reporter says, well, we have all this stuff. We have interviews with him. He has given addresses on TV, and the reporter lists all these things the President has done. And the man says, anyone could have done that. I mean, that's just someone pretending to be a president. As a matter of fact, the President not only doesn't exist, he's not in charge. There is no Washington, D.C. I've never been there. I've never met the President. I've never been to Washington, D.C. So it must not exist. This brick exists. This brick proves that there was a city here. But just because you have a picture of the President doesn't mean he exists. And if there's no Washington, D.C., there's no government. There's no laws. And I don't have to obey that government. And the reporter is kind of confused by all this. Unfortunately, there are people who buy into this man's explanations, and they start to follow him, and the country becomes very divided. Is there a government? Is there laws? Or is there not? And the people who side with the man are the ones who also never met the President, never seen Washington, D.C., despite all the evidence to the contrary. Now, why do I tell this story? Well, I'm going to explain it in the next message, and some of you, based on what I just described, probably already know where I'm going with this. But I want to use it as a catalyst for my next message. So if you want to find out the explanation of my little story, tune in next time. This has been 5 Minute Ministries, and I will see you then.